besides, making a build in Diablo 4 is not basically about allocating skills and stat points. As a matter of fact, the real core of how your build is going to be strong after you have the skeleton of your build, after you have everything else for your build, you're going to get the most power out of it. You're going to be able to reach the highest difficulties of the game thanks to your legendary aspects. So in this video I am going to guide you through every single little thing that you need to know about legendary aspects, from where to get them, how do they work, when do I use them, should I use them to level up, should I not use them to level up, how do I use them on the end game, and which ones are the ones that I should be striving for to get. So basically this video we're going to be dividing it into 3 sections. First, I'm going to teach you with my guide right here how to use them, how do they work, everything about them. And then I'm going to give you some little tricks and tips to actually go get them and start building your character as soon as you start the game. You don't necessarily need to wait until you reach to the end game, and as a matter of fact, on the third portion of the video I'm going to show you which kind of legendary aspects should you be striving for once you reach the end game, and why the previous legendary aspects that you're going to be using for leveling are going to be quite useless. So let's get right into it. So the basics of everything. We have this guy right here, which is going to be the occultist, which is going to be found in every single major town, and this is where you're going to build your stuff. This is where you're going to build your legendary stuff. That being said, you have 2 things about legendary aspects. This is just a little bit different matter for different videos, but we have imprint aspect and we have extract aspect. Imprint aspect is basically placing a legendary aspect into an item. To do so, there are 2 choices. You can use the Codex of Power, and you can use an aspect that you have on your inventory. How do you get aspects on your inventory? Well, you go to extract aspect, and then you take a legendary item that that already has an aspect, and then you extract it. The thing is that it's going to cost you money. And how do I choose which one do I want to use? When do I want to extract aspects, and when do I want to use the Codex of Power? Well, basically, for most of your playthrough, what you're going to be doing is going to be using your Codex of Power. The Codex of Power is basically all of the aspects that you get from the other world, overworld, from the open world, where you go and do your dungeons, and when you do your dungeons you get all of these rewards, and they are infinite. You can imprint them as much as you want, although to imprint the legendary aspects it's going to require for you to have legendary materials. So for example, right here I have my sacred pants, which they are items from the end game. And then we go to Codex Power, and let's say that I want to use the Shadow Veil aspect. Once I go in here, you will see that you require these Veil crystals, which are very common. You have legendary improving materials for armor, legendary improving materials for weapons, and legendary improving materials for accessories. So as you can see, I do not have that much for armor. I have been making way too many armors, and I do not have any more. I need to farm a little bit more. Whereas, for example, I do have for this guy, this one is not requiring to have a legendary thing, so I'm not exactly sure why. This one most definitely should have something that requires. As you can see, it requires 10 fragments of legendary stuff, and I have 12. So this is what you're ultimately going to be thriving. It's not going to be that expensive to you. As a matter of fact, while you're leveling up, this is what you're going to be doing, and it's just going to, up until 50, I believe, it's just going to cost you 1 per item. Then it's going to increase as you level up, and that is basically the end game. Farm for materials, craft stronger materials, and whatnot. And also do have in mind that when it comes to the Codex of Powers, the things that you're going to be imprinting, if you imprint a legendary aspect into your two-handed weapon, it's always going to be 200% more strong, which means the thing is going to be double. So for example, I have my bow right here, and if I place the Dark Shroud, let's actually use something a little bit different, like let's say, where do I have the one that I was looking for, that I always use myself? This guy here. As you can see, the aspect of arrow storms. This is going to give me that one skill that is going to deal 1361 damage. But if I go in here, you will see that that thing is now doubled because it's placed on a two-handed weapon. Whereas if I would to place that aspect on this very same thing, as a matter of fact, I do have this aspect of this very same thing, which is a one-handed weapon. This one has 950 damage. This one has 2721 damage. So as you can see, it is better to place the highest damaging skill into your weapon, but also you can place that skill as well into your talisman, and your talisman is going to be enhanced by 50%, so 1.5 of the effectiveness of that thing. So that is something that you need to have in mind, and that is we're going to be speaking about those little numbers that you see beside it a little bit later, yeah. Basically, that is how it works. Sometimes you will use your Codex of Power, and sometimes you will use the aspects from your inventory. Now, how do I actually maximize what aspects should I be driving to look out in the open world? Let's get into that. Now, this is my Codex of Power. I access my Codex of Power by going to my collections, as you can see right here, and this is my Codex of Power. And basically, you get those legendary aspects to imprint them on your gear, onto your gear, by clearing all of these dungeons that you see on the outer world. As you can see, this one has a legendary aspect, this one has a legendary aspect, but there are way too many of them. This is just too tiresome to go through each and every one of them, and as a matter of fact, you do not want to go through each and every one of them with just like your main one class. You do not want to be getting Barbarian, for example, for your Sorcerer and whatnot. You will use them later for your specific class. So if that's the case, how can I maximize, how can I get the legendary aspects that I want to have? Well, thankfully enough, there are way too many things that I didn't know when I was doing my playthrough, and this menu right here, it's very, very, very accessible. So the very main thing that you want to do is always show only your class. There are aspects that every single class can use, and those are going to be shown as well in here. So for example, the aspect of disobedience, this is for every single class. It is not locked to any class, as for example, opposite to this one. Let me see. This one, as you can see, it's locked to being a rogue. So I wouldn't necessarily need to be a rogue to be able to use that one, because that is my class. The thing is that you cannot imprint every single aspect into whatever you want to have your aspects. Sometimes you would only be able to place offensive aspects into your weapons, into your gauntlets, into your talismans and whatnot, and that is just way too hard to manage to see, because you have your inventory right here, you have your character build, and maybe you want to place an aspect in here that you're not able to place that aspect in there because that is not where that legendary aspect goes to. Like for example, if you go in here, if we go to Codex of Power and I wanted to have something that I will not find, I might think to myself, dude, I know that I had that aspect, then why am I not finding it here? Well, this is where it tells you what kind of aspects are this going to be allowed to use, and it's even better to see them on your Codex of Power, because as you can see, the defensive aspects can be placed into shields, helmets, armors, legs, and talismans. Offensive ones, they are going to go into weapons, they are going to go into gauntlets, rings, and whatnot. And basically that is the core of everything, but there's also something else. I advise for you that before you start your playthrough, before you start doing anything else, come in here and read them, because when you read them, you might think about something that, this for example, I am not a penetrating shot build. As a matter of fact, my build is different. But what if I was? What if I wanted to make a penetrating shot build, and this is a core part of my build? So how do I find it? Do I have to go online? Do I have to go to the wiki to try to find it? No, you only have to click it or press A or X depending on where you are. So as you, for example, right here on PC, I just click the thing and it's going to be pinned on the map. Remember that Diablo, it's a open world game, so you can basically travel anywhere you want to, whenever you want to travel. So for example, as you can see, this pin is going to lead me right exactly towards where I want to go on the map. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter that I haven't discovered that area. I am always going to be guided towards that specific aspect that I am looking for to my build, which is amazing. This way you can start planning your build, you can start planning how to get your legendary aspects, and again, these ones you're going to be using them to level up. Now, let's go into the final section of the video. In the final section of the video, I am going to show you how to most be efficient, how to get the most out of your build, when should you be using legendary aspects, when should you be using codex, and some little tips and tricks that will make you that much powerful than the rest of the people out there. So, let's get right into it. First and foremost, this is a tip that is going to work mainly for characters that have a specific focus build that they do not really use one of the items that they have in their inventory. So for example, I can think right now of the rogue and the barbarian. The barbarian actually is the strongest one. So it's actually, I think that always everyone plays him on S tier, because once you reach to this point of making your character build, this becomes so very much important, and you will see why right now. So this is my weapon. I am on the endgame, but it's very expensive to be switching my aspects, and as a matter of fact, everything that I had before, I had in legendary, but I just run out of materials, and everything is just getting more expensive, that much more and more expensive, especially on the weapons, because you're always changing the weapons for that something better that you have in front of you. So this is my bow, and I ideally, as I am leveling up, I'm still leveling up on my endgame content. So that being the case, I never place legendary aspects in here, but this is one of the most important things to have a legendary aspect on. So how do I mitigate that? Well, once I get to the end game, the real end game, when I have maxed out my character and I have my real bow that I am going to be using, I am going to place a legendary aspect in here. But as you can see, this is a weapon that is a level 52, which is the level that I am right now. Well, I'm level 53, but I just leveled up a little bit while ago before starting making this video. But you will see that this weapon is a level 36. Why? Well, because I have my marksman legendary aspect imprinted on it, and I have it in that because that is a core essential part of my build. I need that. That really improves my damage. And the thing is that, as you can see right here, I have been carrying this thing ever since level 36 because I do not need to change this thing. This thing has the stats that I want. So for example, as you can see, it has the maxed out 37 dexterity that you see right in there. That is something that you can tweak in your menu. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I have damage to close enemies, I have overpowered damage, I have everything, basically everything that I want to have in my weapon, but I never use this weapon. I do not use this weapon for DPS. Since I do not use this weapon for DPS, I really do not care that it doesn't really have that much damage, because that's the only thing that levels are going to do to your items, mostly, in more cases. Whenever you find something that gives you better stats, then by all means you should change it. But for example, regardless of the stats, my bow, since I am a ranger, I am always changing that, meaning that I am always going to be just swapping legendary aspects, and if I want to give them those for my build, then I might just place that legendary aspect in here in the weapons that I am not going to be using, but I'm still going to be benefiting from the things, the stuff. Now, finally, the most important thing. When do I want to use Codex of Power? When do I want to use legendary aspects? Well, that is where you see that extra little numbers that you see right there. The Codex of Power legendary aspects are always going to have the very minimum of the bonus that this thing is going to give you. So for example, as you can see right here, on my chest, I can have a 25% extra armor as long as I am dealing damage. And as you can see, there is a difference between 25 and 50. That is because if I, for example, let's say that I was running out in the world and then, hey, a legendary drops out in the open. I open it up And then let's imagine that when I open it up, oh, surprise, it's actually a 50. I rolled the highest possible thing buff that I could have in this legendary aspect. Then that is when I would like to instead extract that thing and save it. And this is very important that you have this in mind. This is one of the most important things that is going to save your life. A perfect roll, you can only have one of those in your inventory per while you're playing. So as soon as you have something in your inventory, you're not going to be able to get it ever again as long as you have it in your inventory. You're only allowed to have one. So for example, if you're lucky enough to roll a perfect buff into that little thing, you're going to save it. So for example, right here, as you can see, I am saving this thing. As you can see, it really is not the best, the most strongest thing, everything. It is not the maximum. It is not a perfect roll, but it is close to being a perfect roll. So I am going to save this thing for when I actually start building my ultimate build for my character, and that is when I am going to be using this thing. I want to keep it in here, and I want to be stacking them as many as I can, but while you're leveling up, you're always going to be using just the basic stuff, and that's it. While leveling up, you're going to be using the basic stuff, and then the powerful stuff, that's the real endgame. You have to be lucky enough to roll a perfect roll for your buff, or something that is just close to that perfect roll for that time where you actually reach the maximum level of your character. That's where you want to have that legendary, perfect legendary aspect on. And that is basically everything. I thought, I forget, before we go in here, the way to actually get those little things, you have to go in here to the gameplay tab, and then go all the way down here, and you will see, advanced tooltip compare and advanced tooltip information. All of this are going to be marked off. You need to mark them on for you to be able to see all of these little things that I have been showing you. But really, ideally, it is only going to be most important for the legendary aspects and the item rolls for your stats. So for example, right here, as you can see, I do have a perfect roll on dexterity on my on something right here. I have a 37 dexterity, so that is a perfect roll. That is how you would be tracking when do you have your perfect rolls, or when an item is good or not. Anyways, if you like the content and looking to really super appreciate it, no, still today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, it really helps me like you have no idea, to fight against the algorithm of YouTube, which has been doing tricks for me lately. And if no one has told you today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Goodbye.
Thank you.